Hello, mathematical literacy learners. Welcome to question 2, November 2021, paper 1. So we are now looking at 2.1, where it says Mrs. Smith would like to buy a car, but does not have the full cash amount. She downloaded two payments options for two different cars as shown in table 2 below. So if we look at the table, payment options for two different cars and items there, we have a Figo and a Polo. Now the first item saying that retail price or cash price. The first thing we must note there is where it says including VAT. You see there? So this price also includes VAT. You cannot multiply it by 15%. It would be wrong because there's VAT already included here and here. So the only thing you can do to this amount is to remove VAT by dividing by 115%. Maybe I should do a video showing you that. Now, we have a deposit of 5%, and for the Polo Vivo, you don't have to. And we have a monthly installment, which is 2,999 Rand, and on the Polo, it's 3,345 Rands. That means you pay that every single month. A residual value of 30%, and for the Polo, it's 116,759. For the Polo, they gave us the amount, and for the Figo, they gave us a percentage, which means we have to go and calculate it on the purchase price ourselves. Now, on monthly fee, not included in monthly installment. So the 2,999 Rand does not include the 69 Rand that you still have to pay. And for the Polo, they said it's 2.08% of the monthly installment. So we're going to calculate this on 3,345 Rand. They're telling us we must use the monthly installment on this one. And then we have a term agreement. So that is the agreement of how long you're supposed to pay. For this one, they're saying 72 months. And this one, they're saying 48 months. To know how many years, you just divide by 12, and then we have the VAT at 15%. Now they're telling us here that the residual value is the last month's payment, right? So in the last month, you have to pay the residual value. Use table 2 above to answer the questions that follow. State what type of payment option is shown in table 2. So if you go to table 2, there is something that says monthly installments. So that's the type of payment. We pay monthly installments. (2.1.2) calculate the deposit amount for the Ford Figo. So now we go to the Ford Figo. They told us that for the Ford Figo, the deposit is 5%. So it's going to be 5% off the cash price. So we're taking the cash price, which is 215,000. We multiply it by 5%, and then we're going to get the deposit. For those of you who are still struggling, I'm aware that some of us multiply by 5 and forget that this is not 5, but it's 5%. So I prefer to write it again the way I'm going to press it on the calculator. So 5% is known as 5 over 100. And then I go to my calculator, 215,000 multiplied by 0.05, 10,750. Write down in a simplified form the ratio of the term agreement of the Ford Figo to the Polo Vivo. So what they want us to write the ratio. It's a number on the beginning, dot, dot, and number on the other side. So a ratio of the term agreement, they want us to use the term agreement. There it is, 72 and 48. And we have to write it in order the way they gave it to us. So we have to start with Ford Figo and end with Polo. If they swapped it around, we would have to swap it around as well. And then they say in the simplified form. So the simplified form is the last part. First, write the ratio of the term agreement for the Ford and the Polo, and then you'll see your ratio, and then you can simplify it. So let's start with that part. 2.1.3 is 72 is to 48. Let me just double check. Yes. Okay, so now the part where we simplify in a simplified form. Now simplifying means that we lower these numbers without changing the value of the ratio. Now, there are two ways they can ask this. They can say, right, there are three ways they can say. They can say, write it as a fraction. We won't look at that right now. Or they can say, write it as 1:2. Now, remember, 1:2 is like this. We call this a unit ratio, right? So this is not what they asked this time. They asked for simplifying the ratio. So how do we simplify the ratio? If you don't have a scientific calculator like a Casio, you are going to have to do it manually. What I do is I divide my 72 by the first number that can divide. If I divide by 1, nothing changes, right? 72 divided by 1 is 72, and 48 divided by 1 is 48. So I always start with 2. I'll say that if I divide 72 by 2 and I don't get a comma, that means I can divide this by 2. And then I check on the other side because they have to both not have commas. So this one, 48 divided by 2, right? So what if it was 11? What if it's 41? If it was 41 and I divided by 2 and it gave me a comma, I would say, no, 2 doesn't work, and I'll move on to the next number. But in this example, 2 does work. So I say 72 divided by 2 and I get 36. So now I can say this is 36 is 2. Then I come this side and say 48 divided by 2, and then I'll have 24. But it's still, I can still see that it's not simplified. So I go again and say I start over. 1 won't change anything, so I'll go to 2. And I say 36 divided by 2 and I get, what did I do? 36 divided by 2 and I get 18 this side. And then this side I say 24 divided by 2 and I get 12, right? So now I'm going to go again and say, start over. If I divide by 1, nothing will happen, so I go to 2. If I divide 18 by 2, I don't get a comma, and if I divide 12 by 2, I don't get a comma, so I can use 2. So 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. Let me check, is it simplified now? It might be, it might not be, but I'm going to start over again and say, what if I divide 9? If I divide this by 1, nothing happens, so I'm going to go to 2. So if I divide 9 by 2, oops, I cannot divide by 2 because it gives me a comma. So I move on to the next number, even though 6 can be divided by 2, but 9 cannot, so it's not going to work. So I move on. What comes after 2? 3. So I'm going to try 3. If I divide 9 by 3, it fits there, but now I'm going to check, does it divide 6 as well? Yes, no commas. So I can divide 9 by 3 and I get 3, and I divide 6 by 3 and I get 2. Done. Now it's simplified. All right, so which one of the two vehicles will be more cost effective in terms of monthly budget? So now the money that I'm going to pay every month, which one is cheaper? So I'm just going to double check first before I go. In this one, I'm going to pay for Ford, I'm going to pay 2,999. I might have to pay 2,999. Plus, remember they said there's also a monthly admin, which is 69 Rand. So for this one, I'm paying 3,068. This one is 3,300. I haven't even included the monthly installment fee. So this Ford Figo here is the one that is cost effective. So, and then 2.1.5 says, calculate the cost of the VW Polo if monthly installments remain the same throughout the contract period except for the final payment. So this is telling us that we must calculate the cost, but we mustn't include the residual value, which is the last payment. Do not include that. Just calculate the rest of the money and don't include the residual. Okay, so they even gave us a formula. So we're going to follow the formula, which says total cost is total value of monthly installments, admin fees, and residual value. There's going to be a lot. So I have this tendency of just like going and writing the formula and saying 2.1.5 formula. I then realize the total value of monthly installments, I have to calculate it. But I'm not a fan of doing calculations on a formula. So I prefer to do the calculations on the side. So I'm going to start by trying to find out what is the monthly installment, what is my admin fees, what is my residual value, and I'll start again. So first I'm going to do the monthly installments. 3,343 5 rands. So for 1 month it's 3,000 345 rands, but I'm going to pay it how many times? They say 48 times, and then I was told not to include the last month, so I'm going to multiply this by 47. 157,215. The admin fees are equal to, okay, so the admin fee says it's 2.08% of the monthly installment. So again, I'm using the monthly installment, which is 3345 times 2.08% is 208, but I have to multiply that by 40. About that, so that's 47 again. So now we have the residual value. They're saying that we must also add the residual value, and the residual value is 116,759. So and 59 rands. Then we add all of that together, which will give you 277,244.072. Mrs. Smith invested 60,000 Rand at a bank for 2 years with compound interest in the first year. She received an interest rate of 4.3% per annum, while in the second year, the interest rate was 5.1% per annum. So many things go the same time in my brain. I keep making mistakes. Okay, so this is an investment. Remember, we calculate interest on loan, we calculate interest on investment. But this one is an investment, so she will be getting interest from the bank. So her money is going to be invested for 2 years, and we are going to calculate using the compound interest method. Let's just remind ourselves the compound interest method. So with the compound interest method, in the first year, you calculate on 60,000 Rand, and then you get interest. But in the second year, you calculate interest on both the capital and the interest, right? So interest will also have interest, so you have to add it to the balance before calculating the following year. You can no longer calculate on 60,000 Rand for the following year, right? Okay, you see when I do it. So we're going to use this information here that says the first year use 4.3% per annum. So we are happy with the interest rate. Remember, interest rate is what we use to calculate interest. It's represented as a percentage, and it's read as follows: 4.3% per annum. So this one is for a year, and we are calculating for years anyway, so we don't have to worry about that. And then while in the second year, the interest rate was 5.1% per annum. So in the following year, they increased the percentage. Mrs. Smith stated that she would have enough money at the end of the second year to pay the residual value of the Ford Vigo. Verifying. So she stated that she would have enough money at the end of the year to pay for her residual value of the Ford Vigo. So right now she has 60,000 Rand. She's going to invest it in a bank and get more money from the bank for 2 years. And then she says once she's gotten that interest as well, she'll have enough money to pay the residual value of the Ford Vigo. So the first question is, how much is the Ford Vigo residual value, right? How much is the residual value of the Ford Vigo? Because we have to compare it to the money that she has invested with interest, right? So we have two amounts. We need two amounts. We need the investment, including interest, and then we need the residual value. Once we see them both, then we will know whether she will have enough or not. So that's what we need to go and calculate. So I'm going to start with the residual value. Let's go find the residual value for Ford Vigo 6, and I'm going to start with the residual value, but you can start with whatever you want. So the residual value is equal to, I have to take the purchasing price, which is 215,100, multiplied by 30%, 530 rands. Then now we're going to compare this price to the amount of money she's going to have in the bank after 2 years. So she's starting out with 60,000. Let's invest 60,000 for the first year. And what interest are we going to get? 4.3% per annum. So since I'm doing a compound interest, I'm going to separate my years. I'm going to say in year 1, the interest is equal to, how much did she invest? 60,000 multiplied by 4.3% per annum. So in the first year, my interest will be 2,580 rands. Then I'm going to say, what about the second year? So in the second year, in year 2, before I calculate the interest, I have to know how much I have in the bank. This time I have 60,000 plus interest, 2,580, and then that will be 62,580. This is the amount I'm going to use to calculate interest in year 2. is equal to 62,580 times, what is the percentage this time? It's 5.1. Sometimes the percentage doesn't change, sometimes it does, looking at this question. So it's 5.1%. We say this is the interest we got the first year, this is the interest we got the second year. So now I can calculate and say I had 60,000 Rand. Then in the first year, I received 2,580. Then in the second year, I received 3,191.58. So how much do I have now? I'll have 65,771 rands and 58 cents. So yes, she will have more than enough.